Julius Caesar Unpacked. Picture this. It's the final, chaotic years of the Roman Republic. We're looking at a sprawling, magnificent empire that is literally teetering on the edge of a cliff, buckling under the unmanageable weight of its own massive success. And right at the dead center of this gathering historical storm stands one figure, Julius Caesar. Now, his life wasn't just some dusty list of dates or distant military campaigns. No, it was the ultimate pressure test for fraying empire. It was this violent, totally inevitable collision of raw ambition, cutthroat politics, and military might that would change the ancient world forever. The Roman Republic was built to prevent kings, not to eliminate ambition. You see, the core tension of this era was built right into the stones of Rome itself. Rome wasn't some peaceful, harmonious democracy where everyone shared power nicely. Not at all. It was a massive, ever-expanding machine perfectly engineered for elite competition. Sure, the Republic was designed specifically to stop kings from taking over, but it absolutely did not stop ambition. Its ancient foundations were practically groaning, stretched to the absolute breaking point by incredibly powerful men who were constantly trying to outgrow the system. The fragile Republic. To really understand Caesar, we have to look closely at the unsteady, precarious world he challenged, a system held together not just by written laws, but by rigid, unwritten customs and fierce elite rivalries. On the ground, a politician's status in Rome was judged by a ruthless daily checklist. It demanded military victories, public support, family dignity, public speaking, and the absolute protection of allies. The pressure on Roman elites to chase glory was suffocating. In this hyper-competitive culture, just being ordinary, that was basically a complete failure. Leaders were locked in this endless dance where they were half partners and half rivals. They literally needed each other to govern the state. But at the exact same time, every single one of them was desperate to be the undisputed master of the room. So, we have this massive contradiction. The public face, Rome crazed restraint and tradition, versus the private reality. Rome actually rewarded ambition and escalation. On the surface, the city loudly celebrated modesty and sticking to ancestral ways. But behind closed doors, the city richly rewarded those who took massive risks and constantly pushed the envelope. Ambitious men kept bending these unwritten rules until the whole political tradition basically turned into a blood-soaked battlefield. Rome completely blurred the line between politics and force. As their borders expanded into this sprawling Mediterranean superpower, it got incredibly tough to govern everything from just one city. The Republic started to lose track of where political speech ended and military force began. A successful general would come home with staggering wealth and an army of fiercely loyal troops. This created a whole new breed of commanders. They were totally indispensable to Rome's survival, but at the exact same time, they were a fundamental threat to the Republic's stability. The engine of ambition. This brings us right to Julius Caesar, stepping into this incredibly volatile arena to build an absolute powerhouse of personal momentum. Caesar was an absolute master of playing both sides of the Roman coin. The formal face, offices, laws, elections, and titles, versus the real face, loyalty, prestige, and military force. He played the formal game flawlessly, running for office, navigating the complex laws, securing the fancy titles. But underneath all of that, he was manipulating the real levers of power. He wasn't just climbing the traditional political ladder, he was actively constructing a massive, unassailable network of personal dependence entirely around himself. Because in Rome, success creates unstoppable momentum. Caesar weaponized his public image with lethal efficiency. He formed strategic alliances, threw out calculated generosity, and racked up vital military wins. It was a snowball effect. His growing political value turned into overwhelming leverage. Before long, both the common people and the elites started betting on him, making him this incredibly difficult, almost unstoppable force. The conquest of Gaul, this brutal, decade-long military campaign, became the ultimate power engine that would eventually allow him to eclipse the Roman Senate altogether. Let's break down exactly what Gaul gave Caesar and why it mattered so much. First, victory. Rome deeply respected conquerors, and Gaul gave him unprecedented military glory. Second, wealth. He gained unimaginable riches, which easily financed his political influence and, frankly, outright bribery back in Rome. And third, loyal troops. This is the big one. This loyalty could easily outlast any temporary political office. Being out on extended campaigns forged a deeply personal bond between the soldiers and Caesar, a bond that totally transcended their abstract duty to the Roman state. The Senate looks on as ambition outgrows the system. You can imagine the chilling realizations spreading among the Roman elite. The Senate is watching in sheer horror as Caesar builds this total structural dominance. He's got massive popular support in the streets, unquestioned loyalty from his legions, and literally inexhaustible wealth. He's no longer just a successful colleague. He's mutated into an uncontainable existential threat. He's acting a lot more like a future king than a manageable senator. His sequence of power was methodical and, honestly, terrifyingly inevitable. Victory in Gaul converted directly into undeniable legitimacy. That immense legitimacy then secured the fierce loyalty of both his troops and the public. That loyalty translated into massive, crushing leverage, and finally, that leverage resulted in absolute control. Caesar had perfectly mastered Rome's own political logic to become larger than the system itself. Crossing the Rubicon, the mounting tensions were about to violently snap, bringing Caesar to the ultimate point of no return. The Rubicon, from reversible political conflict to irreversible open force. Now, crossing the Rubicon is a famous catchphrase today, right? But in that moment, it wasn't just a physical step across a shallow river in northern Italy. It was the catastrophic transition from a political argument that could be smoothed over to naked armed conflict. The second his boots hit that southern bank, the institutional checks and balances of the Republic officially failed. Civil war erupts as the Republic's internal competition completely shatters. Caesar was basically backed into a corner. He had a binary choice: completely surrender his gathered power to his bitter enemies, or risk absolutely everything in an armed rebellion. And because the fragile Republic could no longer structurally contain the sheer amount of power he had amassed, he chose force over retreat. The consequences were cataclysmic, plunging the entire Roman world into years of bloody, devastating chaos. The dictator's shadow. In the grim aftermath of this civil war, the temporary solutions of a bleeding republic started to morph into permanent, absolute rule. Let's define the word dictator. Originally, it was a temporary Roman emergency office. It was carefully designed to solve a specific, severe crisis and then be immediately given up. But under Caesar, it became a permanent signal that one man now stood entirely above the normal republican balance of power. By repeatedly relying on this exceptional, singular authority, the Roman populace was basically trained to accept permanent personal command. The line between a necessary emergency measure and outright tyranny was permanently erased. Caesar forged a new, deeply consequential historical blueprint. He deliberately bypassed the slow, frustrating consensus of the Senate. He built unchallengeable influence through supreme military command. He appealed directly to the raw emotions of the public. And, most dangerously of all, he seamlessly turned personal military loyalty into absolute political authority. He was the ultimate convergence point for raw ambition, populist support, and a deeply fatal institutional weakness. This absolute dominance leaves us with a haunting historical question. If Caesar rose simply by mastering Rome's own competitive political logic, why did Rome ultimately turn on him, leading to his shocking, bloody assassination right there on the Senate floor? A broken system exposed. Power grew faster than the Republic could contain it. You see, his very existence exposed a terrifying reality. His death didn't magically save the Republic. Instead, it proved that the system was already permanently fractured. Power had simply grown faster and larger than the old Republic could ever hope to manage. The ancient institutions were just too weak to hold back ambition once it became entirely personal and backed by heavily armed legions. And it leaves us with this timeless, provocative thought. When political institutions fail to adapt to the brutal realities of power, are they always doomed to be shattered from within by the very ambition they helped create?